right, Madam Mayor, you are ready to begin.
Wonderful, thank you. Welcome, everyone. It's so great to see people in the chambers here for various reasons. So great. Before we begin, I just want to remind you the meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the Township's YouTube channel, and of course it will be on the YouTube channel beyond in perpetuity. And I don't know if today we have members joining by Zoom, but you never know, we might have somebody.
Paul will be joining us via Zoom.
Okay, fantastic. So down the bench, I'll call on council. We have Deputy Mayor Nelson.
Present.
Councillor Watt.
Present.
And Councillor Johnson.
Present.
And of course myself, Heather Watson. And down this side we have our acting clerk, Martina Chade-Hertwig, CIO, Alana Arthurs, and just like the media way down there. On Zoom, we have our interim treasurer, Paul Creamers. And do we have our, is Jake coming?
He might have got stuck on the road.
What's the name of the business? Our manager of public works may or may not be joining us. So with quorum and attendance, we'll now call the meeting to order. I will now read the land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that we are on the treaty and traditional territory of the Michi-Sagig Inishinabeg. We offer our gratitude to the First Peoples for their care for and teachings about our earth and honor those teachings. And if I could just hold for a moment of silence, please. Okay, moving along, is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Seeing nothing, could I please get a motion for the adoption of the agenda? Councillor Johnson, seconded by Deputy Mayor Nelson, all in favor? That carries. Before us, we have two sets of minutes, one from February 7th, regular council meeting, and one from February 10th, our special council meeting. Could I get a motion to receive?
Also moved.
Deputy Mayor Nelson, and Councillor Watt, all in favor? And that carries. We only have one item on consent. Does anybody want to hold that item for discussion later? Seeing nothing, can we get a motion to receive and approve that?
So.
Deputy Mayor Nelson, seconded by Councillor Johnson, all in favor? And that too carries. Moving right along, we have one of our welcome guests in the chambers, our Member of Parliament, Michelle Ferreri, to give us a bit of an update on matters happening in Ottawa. Come on up.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome.
You want me to stand here?
Please.
I'll come here.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. How are you? Nice to be here. As Mayor said, Michelle Ferreri, Member of Parliament for Peterborough Forza, and happy to be here. In terms of an update, I really just came to meet all of you guys, to see you in your new roles, see if I can be of service to you. Obviously, the things that we're working hard on in Ottawa, cost of living continues to be a really big issue for a lot of the people that are writing in, seniors. That is probably the number one thing we're hearing about. Housing still continues to be a massive issue, getting access to it as well. This Thursday, there will be an announcement. Well, they actually made the technical briefing today for the Via Rail. So after what feels like a lifetime, they're finally starting the procurement process to get the vendors in. So for people to apply for it. So hopefully we'll have Via here as soon as possible. But it's still, I mean, by the time the procurement comes, we're still a ways out from that. But at least the wheels are in motion. I've been in chats with Minister Algebra about that, about where Peterborough sits, and making sure that we're not going to be missing anything on that end. In terms of my file, so I sit as critic for families, children, and social development. Childcare is a really big issue that I'm dealing with, the current bill that I'm dealing with right now, which is C35. So looking for as much input from the community as possible. So I'd love to hear from anybody who's dealing with childcare right now. That's a big one under my file. I would like to hear from you, if I could. Like, I would like to answer questions. I think it would be more beneficial for me if anybody has any questions for me of what's outstanding that they would like to know, I think it would be easier for me to answer. Also working on the 2 committees I sit on, Status of Women and Human Resources. So we're actually investigating abuse in sport, so again, back to children. And then in Human Resources, studying Disabilities Act. So those with disabilities getting access to that funding as well, so they have a bit more in their pockets. So, any questions or anything for anyone?
Council? Deputy Mayor?
Through you, Madam Chair. Well, thanks for coming to business, Michelle. It's nice to have a member of our federal government come and actually see us and actually ask if we have any questions. I guess one question I have and one big thing that we have looming on our plate is a new building. And again, we hear that there's no grants or nothing from the upper tiers of government. And we have a huge cost of putting up a new public works and a fire hall, which is greatly needed for this community as far as for our workers to work in and provide all the other stuff that it provides for our municipality. Just any word on any grants or any funding, or have you heard, Michelle, of anything that's out there for, you know, for our smaller communities coming from the federal government or in the works?
Yeah, no, that's a great point, and I'm glad you brought it up. So what I can do, I haven't heard of anything directly right now for FedDev for that. However, that being said, now that I know, like, what's your timeline around that for you, Madam Chair?
That's a very good question, MP Ferrari. We are just in the preliminary stages of even costing the project out. I'm looking over you, Lynn. In terms of a timeline, care to weigh in on that, please?
Through Mayor Watson. We are potentially looking at the building in 2 phases. So staff's been tasked to come back with a report to look at the costs. They have obviously increased quite a bit over the last 2-3 years. So to update our costs and to determine if there's any cost savings, ideally being able to do it all as one. We do have some money in the budget to start preliminary work, and in an ideal world, we would start it this year, but more realistically next year, I think.
And would there be, have you allocated for provincial funding? Has there been any allocation for provincial funding at this point that you know of?
At this point, no. When the project initially came to council in 2016, there was a big push to apply for some funding. It was federal, it was FCM, I believe, at the time. Unfortunately, unsuccessful. So since then, I don't believe there's been any applications made, and we really haven't found anything that seems to fit. So,
did you get feedback on why it was a no?
No. I have my own thoughts, but I believe the point system, what had been submitted, and I wasn't here, but my understanding of the point system and what was submitted is we were there. There was everything that had been requested had been provided. Part of the challenge I think we have as a municipality is there was no debt. So unfortunately, sometimes when we apply for funding, when there's no debt, it's more of a challenge to receive that.
Punished for having a good bank account. Doesn't seem fair. Yeah, if you have any of that information, that would be super helpful for me when I'm going and having these meetings and knocking on ministers' doors, and hopefully by the time we're in government, be able to look further into that for sure. The other thing that did come up to me, somebody was whispering in my ear of a potential arena in Douro. So I don't know if you guys, that has been brought up to my attention as well in terms of potential funding or getting potential funding for a twin pad for Douro. So I'm happy to advocate on that path as well, which has been mentioned to me too.
And just I'll comment on that. It's certainly something that's been talked about. We have a working committee that has just been given the task of doing some community engagement to find out what it is the community needs, not just with the Douro Community Center, but also Warsaw, and how they can better serve the community. So we're still early in those in that work, but as time goes on, I'm sure there will be some sort of need, whether it's a twin pad or upgrades to an existing facility.
Exactly.
Councillor Watt.
Through you, Madam Mayor. As Earl said, thank you very much for coming out and meet us in person. That's, it's always nice to have our members of parliament and members of provincial parliament come out and personally say hi to us and ask us questions and ask questions. Again, thank you very much. I'd also want to say thank you. Last time I saw you was in Peterborough, you were just heading out to hand out boots and clothing that to some of the homeless and stuff like that. So kudos to you. That's something that is a big problem downtown, well, everywhere, but I mean in our vicinity. So thank you for doing that. My comment more comes around what Harold brought up about funding and stuff like that, but the strings that are attached to it. It's shovel ready. Like it's got to be eased up, especially for a small community like us. You know, we sometimes have to spend $100,000, $200,000 to be shovel ready for something we hope we're going to get a grant on, or at least some kind of help on, and then we don't get it. Well, and then we don't have the funds to do the project, so we've now put, you know, $100,000, $150,000, $200,000 to get this project started. And then when we do come around to another round of funding, or by the time we do come up with some money of our own to actually get the project on the go, that whole thing, or most of it, is out of date. We've got to start right from scratch almost to redo it again. So the shovel-ready thing is very tricky for a small municipality, and I'm sure right across Ontario, not just us. Maybe some of the big places, like, you know, big cities, not that have got an extra slush fund. Not that anybody has that nowadays, but it's just one of those things that it's really tough on a small municipality like us to be exactly shovel-ready for what they need, or for what they require for grants.
Yeah, you're 100% right, and I think we're seeing this in all areas, especially when we look through CMHC. So right now we're doing a study with them through our HUMA committee, but just the amount of, like, there were 2 applications through the city of Peterborough, for example, that were turned down, right? And it's just a challenge. You have to have money to get the money. You don't have the money, and it's like you're chasing your tail sometimes. And there was an organization out in Vancouver, to sort of come back around to your homelessness comment, which is an issue across this country, and they had to spend $1 million in legal fees and consultations to get to apply for the funding. And so you can see how cumbersome that is, or how, you know, it's like, so I think your point is exactly right. I think where we sit, obviously sitting in opposition, I can be a lot more critical of how things are done, but I think it's also a great opportunity to see what is working and what isn't working, and this is the common feedback we hear, especially from municipalities. Like the people are ready to do the work, everybody's ready to do the work, and it's just a delay after delay, as we hear gatekeepers, right? It's just red tape is what we hear, yes, is the word that we hear used to describe this. So we're very aware of it, and hopefully, you know, I think keep saying it, we know, and I think you're exactly right. I think you're exactly right. It's got to change if you want that progression, and you want to help your community move forward. When you have the people ready to do the work, it's like it's the same thing to your point about you had no debt and you got turned down. Like it seems pretty backward, right? To be punished for being ready. So I'll fix that, no problem. I'll have it done by 5.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council?
No, to the chair. I just again want to echo saying thanks for coming out. I do know that when you're in Parliament, I'm sure that you will always keep in mind us and people of town period. So anything you can help along the way, for sure you can push. And don't be a stranger, come back some other time. Appreciate you coming out.
Well, I appreciate that, and through you, Madam Mayor, I would tell you that what I do every single time I drive to Ottawa is I consciously drive through Douro, because it is where I was raised, it is my grounding, and it reminds me of where I came from, and when I come home, I drive through it, and I'm like, what can we do to take care of our whole country? Because I always said Douro is a little metaphor of, and not that there's more in Douro than just Douro-Dummer. I know the 4 corners, I know I'm not isolating anyone. But in that 4 corners, it's the perfect metaphor of what makes a country, right? You've got your church, your store at one point, your school, your town hall, and your graveyard, right? And so I always said that it's a pretty remarkable place. And I was really fortunate. I was at my son's hockey game the other day, and we were standing there, and I was standing with Natalie McMaster, Doug Leahy, myself, and Jim Bailey, and I thought, we're all from the same little postage stamp. in Canada, and it's pretty neat. It's a pretty neat place, and I'm pretty proud to represent it. So thanks for having me here, Madam Mayor. If there's anything else or any other questions, but please, I guess the thing I would leave you with, I don't always know what's happening, and so my office is always open. I know Mayor Watson, she can text me anytime. That's what my job is to listen to you guys, to figure out if I can get through to things faster for you and to help in any way I can. So the door is always open, phone's always on. So always happy to hear from all of you.
Thank you for that, Nate, that's it, we need a motion to
Motion to
receive.
receive the delegation.
Thank you very much, Councillor Watt, seconded. Councillor Johnson, all in favor? And that carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving along, we now have a delegation from the Warsaw District Lions Club. Somebody drew a short straw.
It's not that bad. So good evening, everyone. You should have somewhere in front of you, I think, a copy of our proposal to waive the taxes on the Lions Park, which is across the street. The proposal outlines our position with respect to how we feel about it. If you've had the opportunity to read it, and I assume you have. So I think the best way to go forward is to answer questions, because you must have some. And so if there are, by all means, fire away.
Thank you very much. Council, questions?
If I may, through you, Madam Chair, and this is maybe more of a staff question. I know we can look after township taxes. Is there an opportunity to also, for the Lions Club or the county, to waive the county portion, or how does that work? I don't really know. I know we've waived taxes before for certain things, but in the past, but I don't know what the options not are.
Through Mayor Watson to Councillor Watt, I'm going to ask Paul.
Just through you, Mayor Watson, just going to do a quick sound check. You can hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So we can't directly waive any taxes for other jurisdictions. We are able to, and I know there's been some discussions in the background about community grants. We can provide community grants to different organizations, and that would be the means of how we can provide or waive property taxes, but we cannot directly waive property taxes.
Now, are you specifying county or only? So the municipality would qualify, but the county would not?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Watson, we cannot waive any property taxes. So we can, it's kind of a legality type thing where we can provide a grant in the amount of, but we can't officially waive property taxes. That would be considered bonusing and would be against the Municipal Act.
So just to clarify, Paul, the request that's before us, we as a municipality could choose to provide a grant for the township portion of taxes and or the county portion of taxes. The Lions Club would still receive their property tax bill and then would apply that grant toward the property taxes therein. Is that what you're saying, Mr. Fimmers?
Yeah, that is correct.
Thank you. Any other questions from council?
Thank you very much, through you, Madam Mayor. The Lions Club owns half of that park, the county owns the other half. Does the county pay us property tax for for their part, or how does that work, seeing it's a...
Is that a treasurer question? Paul, did you catch that?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Watson, I did hear the question. wish I had the answer off the top of my head. I can check first thing in the morning. I do. I also believe the amount of the taxes is slightly different than what was on the letter. I was planning on being there today. I just had to be remote, and that amount is sitting on my desk. So I can get that to council, the exact amount, but it is slightly different than what was in the letter.
Now, which
yeah.
one are you referring to? You referring to previous year's taxes or this year's taxes? What have you been looking at?
So I would have been looking at, that's a good question. I asked my tax coordinator to get me the amounts, and the numbers that she told me, they were different. So I will need to confirm exactly what the amounts are, but they weren't drastically different. I mean, it was in the ballpark, and maybe that is the explanation, that it was a different year than what you're referring to in your letter.
Well, it's probably the current one then, because the current one, I don't have it with me, but it's slightly higher, yeah. So if there's a difference in the number, and it is slightly higher, then that's this year's, which we've already received the billings.
Right, you would receive the interim for that this
That's
year.
correct.
So there probably is a slight difference there. I'm also not seeing the education tax in your letter. I don't know if that was factored in.
That was factored in. I'm talking about the total amount.
Right, right.
So, and this is based on last year only, because obviously we didn't have anything at that point for this year.
I understand. Thank you. Any other questions from council on this request? Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, to the chair. That amount that we do see was last year, 1183. My understanding that the county doesn't pay nothing. My understanding, and the Lions pay for the full amount there. They pay that full amount, and therefore, I think what they're looking for, just like what you had discussed, is that you can get a grant or give them the grant, that they would pay for that. I do know that other areas, they don't pay for these kinds of things. And I do know in the past, we used to have money that we could, when people came and asked for $200, $500, $300, whatever it was, we had an amount of money set aside, and then we would draw on that. Well, every year we used to have a list, maybe 10 things, and who we want to give and how much we're going to give and all that. And I guess that's been gone in the last X number of years, but we always had that list, and we would go through it to see who would get whatever that we could set aside. We had an amount, and everybody would go towards it. But I do know, like, the groups that I've been involved in, like, for instance, the office in Douro, we used that building all the time, and we never ever paid nothing towards it. I think that's what but bottom line is that what they're asking for is, this is survival. Like, they're running out of money fast, and bad enough to try to get members besides trying to get money. And the thing is that the charitable group, that money they get, they donate it out. They don't have any big bank account or anything else. They just donate it back out to fundraisers like they did this year.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. I certainly would agree. The work of the Lions Club is very valuable to the community. And while you're here, let me thank you on behalf of, to take back to your club, for everything that you do for the community, not just the funds raised, but just bringing the community together. Just shifting gears for a moment, picking up on Councillor Johnson's point. Paul, I don't suppose you have a sense of how much has been budgeted for community grants, donations, sponsorships, like that kind of general line for when organizations like the Lions Club come forward and make those requests like Councillor Johnson was referring
to? Mayor Watson, I do have those amounts. So in the 2023 budget, we have $3,900. They are split out into 4 different categories. One category is just grant. So I'm not sure, based on what the criteria for that amount is, but then the other next three are a bit more defined. We have health services grant, agricultural service grant, and recreational services grant. There's slightly different amounts there. If anyone needs it, I can provide the exact amounts for each one.
Thank you for that. I wonder if it would be worthwhile, and not to dismiss the request that's coming forward tonight, but just to pick up again on Councillor Johnson's point, it would be worthwhile to look at in the future having a formal application process so organizations can come forward and make these requests and follow a certain criteria, whether, you know, as defined by us. And maybe we could get staff to report back on that at some point. I don't know if do we need a motion for that? Yeah? Anybody want to make that motion? Councillor Johnson?
Yeah, I'll read what I have in front of me here, but I'll give it to you in a minute. The staff be directed to investigate options of establishing a community grant program in the township of Douro-Dummer, including a process for applications, awarding and recommending budget allocation to be in place for the 2024 and report back to council. So basically let's just pick up in 1 second. Basically what Paul said, there is some money there, but I think we need to be involved in knowing how we can use that only when requested. You know.
Will somebody second that motion? For staff to report back?
Sure. I'll second that
Deputy
motion.
Mayor Nelson? So let's deal with this one while it's on the floor. All in favor? And that carries. So that's for 2024 budget. There's a copy of that. Now 2023, going back to the original matter and the delegation at hand, do we have any other questions of the Lions Club with respect to their requests before we start entering into some sort of discussion or dialogue about it? No? Or do you want to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion.
All right, how about that? Go for it.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the delegation and make a motion that we look at giving them assistance on the taxes through a grant for this year and move forward with the second motion for next year.
Subsequent years.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think the clerk will probably want you to be a little bit more specific with, give them with assistance for tax for this year. Like a dollar value, or could you be a little bit more precise? And Madam Clerk might have some guidance on it, so hold on a second.
In your motion, you could state that the township provides a grant to the Lions equal to the amount of taxes that will be due to them for 2023.
That's my motion. That's
Perfectly
my,
worked.
that's my motion, yes.
Now, that would be inclusive of both municipal and county taxes, then?
Yes, that's my motion, that's it, for the total tax cost.
I see our CAO has her hand up
Oh,
first.
No, that's okay. Through you, Mayor Watson, actually to our treasurer, just to confirm, do we have adequate funds within the existing grant line items for that now, or do we need to take money from elsewhere before we move on?
Through Mayor Watson, based on the last few years' spending, I would say in the requests that have come through, and that the fact that there are no current requests for those funds, then there would be available money for that amount.
Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying. Councillor Watt.
Through you, Madam Mayor. And I've just been trying to think on the last, as we've been discussing this, the stewards of the Stony and Clear and White that they come every year and we do a grant for them, but it's nowhere near what we have in that kitty. If we got $3,900 in there right now, it's still, I can't remember what it's 500 or 750, whatever they ask for. We've never turned them down because it is a worthwhile thing, but that's the only other one I can think of off the top of my head that we've been asked for, so I'm fully in, I'll second.
Are you seconding that motion,
Just-
Councillor? Let him finish speaking first. Are you done, Tom? Are you
Yes,
done?
yes.
Just one other question I had for Barry. I assume that the Lions Club is still going to continue doing the maintenance to the property, and I believe you just cut the grass and do all.
We've never charged the county or the municipality or whatever for maintenance.
No.
Never have.
No, I'm fully aware of that. I just, that's my question, that was going to continue on and there, hopefully.
No, we cover all that cost.
Yep. Thank you.
Any other questions to the motion? We'll call for the vote, all in favor? And that carries. Mr. Blight, Mr. Bryan, Mr. Jones, thank you very much for popping in.
Okay.
We'll get that all sorted in due course.
All right.
Madam Mayor, through you, so just to be clear on going forward with the first motion, every year, are we gonna put a list together, or do they have to apply every year?
And I guess the question would be, do you have some sort of application that we will submit?
At this point, it's not. There's no application process. But I think that's the goal, is to get to a point where it's a little bit more, to both new, or it's a little bit more consistent. So the motion is that including a process from an application right through to awarding the application or the requests and recommending budget allocation. So there will be a new process that we're looking at, and we'll have staff report back on what that looks like.
Okay, so because we might just well say at the gate with respect to taxes, we're going to go ahead and cover the first go around. Obviously, we have to. We couldn't let it lapse because they're due. Taxes are due on the 28th of the month, and whether you're going to be in a position prior to that.
The mechanics, so for 2023 taxes, the motion carried that you will get the grant, the equivalent of what your tax bill is. For 2024, we'll have an application process in place with prescribed timelines.
But because the first installments are due on the 28th, is, we're going to have to pay that out.
Yes.
So consequently, how does the grant come through to us? Like, what is the mechanism by which the money actually comes through to us? Does it come through with a check? Is it some sort of credit scenario?
It can't be a credit scenario, it would have to be a check. So
Right.
In 2023, the municipality will write a check for the amount once it's known what that amount is.
Right.
And I suspect that will be done in such a way that there won't be any penalties for late charges or anything to that effect, that we would be able to figure out the logistics on that.
Right, so he shouldn't have to pay by the 28th of this month.
Should I just have Paul contact him?
We can just have our treasurer contact you following the meeting. We all know what the intent is and what we're working towards, and that's so.
I'm not trying to complicate the issue, I just don't want us to
get beyond.
in arrears, so to
Yes,
speak.
of course. So we can have Paul reach out to you following the meeting and figure out the logistics on how to coordinate.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you just give your contact information if you're gonna look
Oh,
after it? You got it?
got it.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right.
Okay,
Sorry, I opened up that ball.
Thank you.
that's all. Thank you very much, Mr. Blight.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Where am I now? Other business. Report and capital project status. Okay, 9.1.
So,
We just need any questions for staff on this particular report. Questions? Are we all opening it, trying to find it again? Councillor Watt?
One quick question, if I may, please, through you, Madam Mayor. The computer modernization, it says ongoing. And I know it kind of come up a little bit at one of our library board meetings, but they've had a couple out there that have more than seen their day. Is there something here in the, that we're going to renew that is still feasible for someone to use for internet in the library coming forward?
Through you, Mayor Watson, to Councillor Watt. I have had some conversations with Maggie just about our current inventory and what we have. We're trying to get everybody established on a laptop to give them the flexibility to, move from their current desk location if they're working from home. In addition, looking at our phone systems and possibly the ability to be able to answer from a laptop as opposed to a physical device. We've had some setbacks with our IT department in trying to get somebody on board to assist us through that process. But once we get through that, we do have a number of desktops that I have said to Maggie, we probably have something here that we could then donate to the library. I think we're actually at the point where we have one extra laptop right now, so I don't want to give that one up. But potentially if they're looking for a laptop, we can also look as we go through the inventory to see if there's something here. So we're getting closer through that modernization and the funding that was provided to spending it so that we're up to speed and we have everybody upgraded. I'm just really waiting on that IT person in hopes that they can guide us through the final stages.
Perfect. And the reason asking that was because, budgets are tight and stuff like that, and computers are expensive. So I thought if we have something that someone only needs to dedicate, if they only need to dedicate 2 or 3 for someone to come in and use for internet use, it may be perfect for that. You may not be able to use it to do the day-to-day business, but for internet, it would be fine. So
I did tell her if we have
appreciate that.
something,
Thank you.
we'll happily donate to the library.
Excellent.
Any other questions on report 9.1?
Make a motion to receive.
Councillor Johnson, thank you. Seconded, Councillor Watt, all in favor? And that motion carries. On to item 9.2, the 2023 budget approval, and I will put it over to you, Mr. Crimmers.
Thank you, Mayor Watson. Before council is, I know it's been a long process, and I'd like to thank all of council for working through staff on this one. I know with council being new and it being a new group, there was definitely some learning curves, and I think on both sides, I think staff will approach it a little bit differently next year as well. But all in all, I think the process got to the point where it needed to get to. So before council is approval is a report to approve the 2023 budget. I know the number's slightly lower than what I previously sent to council in an email. It was a calculation thing, luckily, and luckily this time it went the right way. So that's why it's slightly different. The numbers are actually the same in terms of the bottom line, just how we were calculating the a little bit off. So it's there now. That's the point of triple checking before the numbers go out. If there's any questions at this point in time, otherwise we'll pass the 2023 budget and staff can start all our procurement and capital projects for the year.
Thank you for that, Paul. Questions, comments from council? Nothing. Councillor
Through you, Madam
Watt.
Mayor. No, I just want to say thank you to everyone, Paul. A lot of work gone into this, staff. It's a big process. It's a lot to go through. I want to thank you all for diligently taking under consideration the times we're in right now and how you've helped council come up with a reasonable budget that's still going to keep us at least status quo, maybe get ahead a little bit, but in the time that we're in right now, I think we've done very well, and thank you everyone. And if there's no questions on it or changes, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the 2023 budget.
Motion is on the floor. Councillor Johnson.
I'll second.
Councillor Johnson seconded it. Seconded it.
I just wanted to say one thing.
Of course.
To the chair. Again, Paul, I want to thank you and all the department heads that they kind of listen to us and work out some details to be able to be more presentable budget that we can take out to our taxpayers. So I want to thank you for the work you've done, Alana, all the hours you put into it, trying to make that line work, but now we know what we're going to be doing for next year.
Thank you for that. Paul, I echo what my colleagues have said as well. Thank you for your work, the finance department, all the managers and staff. It seems like eons ago, but it wasn't really that long ago that we had that presentation in December where I believe I said it's a staff budget, and it was sitting around a 13% increase overall, and staff have been fantastic to be able to answer our questions and help us work on getting that number into something more realistic. And thanks to council as well for your work in doing that. You know, it took a lot of time and effort and brainstorming and trying to figure it out. I'm really proud of our ability to cooperate and work through that together. We do tend to look at the percentages, let's be honest, but we know as councillors that it is like comparing apples to oranges. So, you know, the percentage of the increase at 5.04% isn't the same as what 5.04% would be, say, in the city of Peterborough, you know, who passed a 3%-ish budget. You know, it's completely different. We don't have the population density and the same tax base there, and unfortunately, you know, with cost of living going up, you know, 6-7%, the fact that we're able to fall in below that is a real testament to our ability to hold the line on things. And I know it's in your report, Paul, but it goes, it's worth repeating that, you know, that 5.04% increase is really a $52.73 annual increase to the median property value as assessed by MPAC. So it's just important to reiterate that. You know, we're working hard to keep taxes low, recognizing that the times are challenging for folks. Just a question before I call the vote, because I know you guys are anxiously awaiting that. This being our first budget, as I said, I'm really pleased with how we were able to work through it, but I'm sure staff have taken notes and our feedback as individual councillors, and I'm always looking for ways that we can improve. So before we enter into the 2024 budget, because I'm sure you're so eager to jump into that now, that at some point perhaps staff can report back on allowing more time for deliberation, not time in the calendar, but dedicated time for deliberation with council and staff to look at the budget, and perhaps also how we could go about setting budget targets over 3 or 4 year budget cycles. And I don't know if you need a motion for that, or if that was something that you were already factoring in as you're planning ahead for 2024.
Through Mayor Watson, I think if, you know, as far as additional deliberations, when we bring back the budget schedule for 2024, which ironically will be sooner than you think, because we'd like to get it passed before the end of 2023, when we bring back that schedule, I think we'll define the budget meetings a little more, and we'll try to be a little more specific with departments. So you have that opportunity to ask, you know, two departments that day, and then we move on to the next day, so it doesn't seem like it's so compounded. That's not a problem. I think if we want to look at a policy on how we deliver it over the next 3 to 4 years, whether we set a threshold as opposed to bringing you that 13% and making you hack away at it, we probably are better just to have a motion, just to give us the ability to track that direction, so we can come back to council with some, whether it's a policy or a procedure or something from our finance department that makes sense.
Okay, fair enough. So, were you going to add something?
You'll have a vote on the motion.
Yes. So we do have a motion on the floor to adopt, pass the 2023 budget. So we'll call for the vote on that. All in favor? Thank you, that carries. Is a member of council willing to make a motion to have staff report back on setting how it would look to set some targets over 3 or 4 year budget cycles?
Absolutely.
Deputy Mayor Nelson?
Yeah.
Councillor Johnson? Any question?
Quick question or comment, if I could, through you, Madam Mayor. And it kind of comes back to this year's, as you pointed out, it started out very, very high, and we whittled it down to 5, but we have to keep in the back of our minds going forward the fact that we can't fall behind. That's a big thing that, and I know it's a tough pill to swallow sometimes, but you know, this is probably the biggest 5 point, a little over 5%, the biggest budget increase we've had in quite a while. You know, we've always want to keep it around 3, 3.5, 4, kind of like that. You know, keep it as the lowest or second lowest in the county, but that can come back and bite us, which I think it basically has now. So we have to keep, you know, when we come back with this, and come back with a target kind of like that, we have to keep in mind that, you know, inflation and, you know, we don't want to just keep the status quo. We want to get ahead. We want to maybe upgrade a few things, whether it's buildings, whether it's roads, whatever. We have to be cognizant of the fact that it costs money, and hopefully down the road there'll be some surprise money come, but we can't ever bet on that. There's no crystal ball. So that's my only comment, but thank you.
Fair point, thank you. So we'll call the vote on that, all in favor? And that also carries, thank you. And thank you again, Paul, to you and everybody on staff for your work. On to item 9.3, establishing speed limits on Douro-Dummer roads, and CAO Arthurs is going to take that one. Elena?
Through you, Mayor Watson, to the rest of council. The recommendation is that report CAO 2023-07, report dated February 21st, 2023, regarding establishing speed limits on Douro-Dummer roads, that the policy be adopted. This came to council last spring. There was a couple of roads specifically that we were dealing with, the council of the day, and those took precedence over determining the appropriate speed limit for those. We had some consultation work done. In the meantime, we had a consultant as well as our legal team review the policy for addressing speed limits, and partly due to what we were dealing with, and also the random requests that come in, just so we have more of a streamlined process. At the time, council dealt with the 2 speed limit requests that we had in front of them, although we did not pass the policy. It was asked to be deferred and brought back. So essentially, this is just coming back and asking council to adopt the policy so that we can address those speed limit requests coming in and handle them by way of a policy as opposed to just arbitrarily as one-offs.
Thank you for that. Questions from council? Councillor Watt?
Well, want to get a motion on the floor first, or?
We're going to make a motion, Deputy Mayor?
I was going to make a motion to accept the policy.
Seconded?
1 second, and just a quick question for you, Madam Mayor.
Yep.
And I did read through it fairly well, but it still does say, just for people, that it will, like, all these will still come back to council for approval, so I guess, yeah, it's not something that, it's a great policy, believe me. I mean, it's something we've needed for a long time, but it does say it's still going to come back to council for deliberation, and whether we decide to or not to, or so on and so forth. So that was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you have your hand up as well, Councillor Johnson? No? All right.
No, I think it's good.
All right, all in favor? And that carries.
Excellent.
On to item 9.4, marriage license and civil marriage ceremonies. And that's from our acting clerk. Martina, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Watson. So the recommendation on this report is that the clerk's office report dated February 21st, 2023 regarding marriage license and civil marriage ceremonies be received, and that the Township of Douro-Dummer provide the service of issuing marriage licenses, and that the acting clerk and deputy clerk be appointed as persons authorized to issue such licenses, and that the Township of Douro-Dummer provide the service of solemnizing civil marriages, and that the acting clerk and deputy clerk be authorized to solemnize civil marriages as provided in the Marriage Act, and finally, that staff be directed to bring back corresponding bylaws to formalize these appointments and to establish fees for the services.
All right, a multifaceted recommendation.
Many, yes.
Any questions, or anybody want to make a motion? Deputy Mayor Nelson.
I guess question, and I'll make a motion. I guess my only question is that we clean up maybe just for mileage, if the clerk or deputy clerk is going to provide that service at wherever that might be. If they were going to Niagara Falls to provide the service, that the people asking for the ceremony would be in, would have to pay for the mileage of said clerk or deputy clerk. That's my request there, and other than that, I would make a motion, we accept the report and as put in front of us.
One second.
Councillor Johnson? Councillor Wall?
Quick question, and it just spurred me when Councillor, or Deputy Mayor Nelson's comment there. So does this give you authority across Ontario, or is it just in our own municipality? Or they didn't really specify that out for sure, kind of like that. Like, I mean, it's our clerk, so you saying like go to Niagara Falls, like it's one of those things that you kind of wonder, Is it just in our township that the supplies come out, but no?
Madam Clerk?
Yep, through your, Mayor Watson. So through this process and based on the fees in the report, we would be able to provide these services in our township and outside of the township. But the fee structure is different so that if it's inside the township, it's a lower fee because we're not traveling, it's for our own residents. And then the fee is higher if we're traveling outside of the township to provide these services.
Sure.
We'll call for the vote. All in favor? And that motion carries. Thank you. Item 9.5, removal of mandatory face covering policy from the CAO. Ms. Arthurs, over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Watson. The recommendation is that CAO 2023-08, report dated February 21st, 2023, requesting that the mandatory face covering policy A28 be rescinded, be approved. This really is just a housekeeping issue. Obviously, most of us are not masked within the township office any longer. We do still have some policies in place that, provide the opportunity and to be aware if people are sick, and we do have some that still come in if they're not feeling well or they feel they've been exposed that are wearing masks. But with the removal of our vaccination policy, we thought we would bring this one back to have that dealt with as well. Normally, again, we've done a policy on policies, so some of these internal processes we wouldn't need to come back to council, but this one was approved by council, so we thought we would bring it back to have it formally rescinded.
Thank you.
Make a motion to the removal of the amended face policy, covering policy.
Okay, anyone want to second that? Deputy Mayor Nelson? All in favor? And that motion carries as well. We can now take your masks off, everyone. Okay, on to committee minutes and other reports. Deputy Mayor Nelson, an update on county council matters, please.
Okay, thank you. We've not a whole lot to report on, other than that we've been working on the budget at the county as well. At the last meeting, we lowered it again, and we had a public meeting that only the committee was at, and the rest of council, we were told that we didn't have to go or shouldn't really, we might as well just stay at home because the committee was going to look after that meeting, and that was meeting of the public meeting, so we've already had that. I never heard nothing, I don't believe you heard anything, Heather? I don't believe we heard anything that there's any surprises, so I believe that it probably went over quite well. And again, I believe that we are at approximately about a 4% of an increase, just a little over 4% for the county levy. So again, that will be approximately on their average, about $56 on the average assessed value of each per year. So between the county and our tax levy, we're probably looking at somewhere on the average household of maybe $100 per year. I would roughly say, don't quote me on that, but as the numbers come out, I think that's pretty close to what we will see as a tax increase on the average assessed value of $260,000. So take it from there. Again, that's the percentage. Again is not always. It's not as bad as what the true dollar value is on the assessed value. So that's where we're at with the county for the which will be passed at the next county council meeting, I believe, if there's nothing else that will come forward. So again, there was a lot of hard work in behind with staff and the people to make that happen as well. And again, we were at over an 8% increase when we started at the county levy. So again, we got that down quite a long ways, and that's thanks to staff and council working together and making that happen. Another thing, I'm part of the waste committee. We just had our first meeting last week. Sorry, not a lot to really tell you, we're just kind of more or less getting started in that waste committee. There's going to be a lot of changes that are coming forward with the recycle program, with that all changing in January of '24 for the county. So stay tuned, there's going to be a lot more information coming forward as the producers take over the Blue Box program actually within the county. So, and a lot of, not really so much unknowns, it's unknown for a few things, but it's law that they have to provide the same service that we've been receiving with the Blue Box program. So people aren't really going to probably see a whole lot of difference other than some of that cost shifting from the county level, no doubt, through that to products. And I believe that that's might be some of the reason why we're seeing some increases in a lot of groceries. I think in preparation for the programs that they're going to have to take over. So when you see a lot of this happening, I believe in the background that is what some of the producers they're applying the money now to get their money. They're looking to get the money in their pocket so that they can look after this program as well. So some of it's inflation, but some of it is looking ahead for them, I believe, as well. So just a little bit of insight there. What else has been happening at the county? We had a presentation by our MPP of Dave Smith come and presented to us on looking for our commitment at the county and for the city. He had went to the city prior to coming to the county in the last council meeting, and it was for basically they're looking to provide 12 beds for a lot of opioid addictions and all that stuff that's happening within our community. I believe there was 10 deaths just in January from opioid addictions, and this is not really what we call from the home. There's the homeless side of this as well, but this is more from like addictions that our brothers, our sisters, our aunts, our uncle, like this is really, it's really touching the amount of opioid addictions that are in the community that is happening, and the amount of resources that it's taking from our ambulance service to go and deal with this. Like apparently every day when we hear the stats from the county and we hear the stats from what's out there, they're at least the minimum one call a day that they're going to deal with an opioid addiction, which is very costly on the county. So they're looking at including, they're hoping to include 12 beds. They have a facility, they haven't released that because they're looking for, they want to keep that hidden until we know they have the resources to fund that. And they got a commitment from Ontario, the provincial government, to provide 1.338 million for
That's the fact you asked me to verify.
1.338 million to start off with to provide these services for beds, but they needed a commitment from the county and for the city for at least 100,000 each, and we made that commitment at the last county council, and the city actually made that commitment, and it's a commitment for the next 2 years. And so anyways, we provided that, and they needed to know so that we could get the funding by last Friday. I haven't heard whether we were successful in that funding, but that was the commitment that we provided with Mr. Smith to take back to his counterparts at at the provincial level anyways, so anyways, it's kind of exciting news that it's a gap that they found. Without going into a whole lot of detail, it's a gap there that can be, hopefully, when they go to the hospital and they look, or they come out and ask for help, that we can provide the help for them to keep them off and actually break that pattern. And that's been the gap all along, apparently, that's been missing. And so I do really hope that we can help some people and save some lives by providing that service, and mental health, it comes in there too. There's a whole bunch of people that are involved. Forecast is involved, and CMHA. Anyways, and a lot of volunteers, donations that he was trumping up from different organizations as well. So there is other private money that is coming in to help with this addiction. And anyways, I'm kind of rattled on enough about that, but anyways, I believe that it's a worthwhile cause for our community and for the county and city. Other than that, I really can't think of anything else. Big highlights, but that's kind of the biggest highlights that have been happening at the county.
Thank you for that.
Make a
Councillor
motion to
Johnson?
receive that report. Carol?
Thanks.
Councillor Watt, second. All in favor? That carries. Certainly having a detox and rehab facility in our community that gives preferred service and access for people living in our community and the neighboring communities is going to be a big step forward. I agree. Moving on, we have some minutes for the Police Services Board from October 20th. Could I get a motion to receive those, please? Councillor Watt, seconded by Councillor Johnson. All in favor? That carries.
Quick
I
question.
would tell you, look like you had a
Real
question.
quick, if I could, please. When I was on the board before, we had every month there was money came back to the township.
The
And,
transfers.
what is it?
The transfer payments that happened?
That came back, yes. And that money at that time was going to be earmarked to get us another speed sign possibly down the road. Is that still maybe something that's possible? I know I've been asking, but that was, I can't remember whether there was ever a motion on it, but I do know we did discuss that about getting the second speed board to put in through the township. And I know it only runs certain months of the year because of the weather and stuff like that. The only option on it was who's gonna look after it and get the data off and stuff like that, but it's just a curiosity thing. I don't need an answer right now, but just something that maybe could be discussed at the next board meeting.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Yeah, we don't have another board meetings dates scheduled as of yet, but I can certainly raise it, and perhaps in the meantime, staff can do a little digging and see what the backstory is on that. Awesome, thanks for raising it, Tom.
Yeah, that's good.
Did we get a motion on, where are we, motion, seconded?
Yeah.
We just need to call the vote?
And we go.
We voted. All right, we're on to the library board. That's right, you spoke after the vote.
I did.
Library board minutes. Motion to receive those, please. Councillor Watt, seconded by Deputy Mayor Nelson. All in favor? Motion carries.
No sneaky hand.
That's right, I'm like, I wanted you, Councillor. Okay, moving on to correspondence, we have a letter regarding school board elections from the town of Petrolia. What does council wish to do with this letter? Councillor Watt?
I'd like to receive and support it, please.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Johnson. Any discussion? All in favor? That motion carries. We have no bylaws. How did that happen? No reports from notices of motion. Any notices of motion?
I do have one if I could, please. I just have to bring it up. I apologize for using my phone here, but it's a thing coming up in Douro. And it's a date for a dance. It's Saturday, February 25th, which is coming this weekend, St. Joseph's Parish Hall. And what we're trying to do is get back into the old time theme and get people to come out and maybe learn. I think they may have a square dance caller even lined up, which is pretty rare these days, so but they're trying to bring some things back into the community and get some people out and involved, so it's Saturday, February 25th at St. Joseph's Douro Hall, and it starts at 8 p.m. So Saturday evening the 25th.
Who's that put on that?
It's says featuring, I don't know.
Have they advertised it?
There is a poster and stuff, yeah, and it came from, Carmella sent it to me. So it's, now there is a cost for it, 1200 are free, there is a cash bar, there's snacks provided, and instruction for those interested starts at 7:30, and the dance begins at 8 till 11, so,
Was this square dancing?
pardon me? Saturday, it was Friday to begin with.
It's square dancing.
Everything, they're gonna do the whole 9 yards, so there's some training on it, and then featuring square and round dancing, waltzes, polkas, and more. But it doesn't,
Sounds great.
it says an authentic cultural experience with Natalie and Vanell, so I guess they must have something to do with it too.
Alright,
Yeah, so anyway, that's this Saturday night, and they're gonna try and run them, on a regular basis and see if they can get some interest generated in it. But that's it for my community note.
thank you for sharing that announcement. Any other announcements from council? Nope. We have no closed session. So confirming by law, can I get a motion, please? Deputy Mayor Nelson, seconded by Councillor Johnson, all in favor? That carries. Take note of the next upcoming meetings. We have a short-term rental committee meeting tomorrow that Deputy Mayor Nelson, you are on that committee. And our regular council meeting on March 7th. And finally, a motion to adjourn. Councillor Watt moves, Councillor Johnson seconds, all in favor? That carries. Thank you, everyone.